In light of the evidence, I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Williams. The judge's words echo through the suddenly silent courtroom. I can't move, can barely breathe. After months of being dismissed, invalidated, and mocked, someone with authority has finally acknowledged what I've known all along. I was wronged. Across the room, Carol's perfectly composed mask slips for the first time. Her manicured hand trembles slightly as she reaches for her water glass. Beside her, my father's head drops into his hands, the full weight of his wife's betrayal finally sinking in. $8,000. The sum that represents 2 years of late nights, aching feet, and forced smiles as I waited tables. The money that was supposed to be my ticket to nursing school to fulfill the dream my mother and I had shared before cancer took her when I was 10. The future that Carol casually stole and spent on her son's extravagant wedding without a second thought. As the judge continues detailing Carol's financial misdeeds, I think about the journey that brought me here, from a frightened teenager to someone who fought back. I never imagined I would take my family to court, but then again, I never imagined my stepmother would steal my college fund either. Some victories come with a price, but as I sit here watching justice unfold, I know this was a battle worth fighting. 3 months earlier, you did what? My voice cracked as I stared at Carol across our kitchen table. The world seemed to tilt beneath me, reality shifting like quicksand. Carol's perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically against her coffee mug, her expression calm, too calm. I used it for the wedding, she said with a dismissive shrug. Luke needed help with the cost, and it's family money. You'll get over it. Family money? The words came out strangled as blood rushed to my face. That was my money. I worked 2 years waiting tables to save for college, Carol. You said you'd invest it for me. She took a measured sip of coffee. And I did. I invested it in something important, your brother's wedding. Her son. Not my brother. Luke wasn't even pretending to care about the fallout. His dream wedding with its ridiculous venue and flower arrangements that probably cost more than my tuition was apparently far more valuable than anything I could have planned for myself. Flashback. My mother's dream. Mom and I used to flip through nursing school brochures together when I was 9, just before she got sick. Nurses change lives, Emma, she'd tell me, her eyes bright with a mix of pride and hope. They're the heart of healthcare. When the cancer diagnosis came, it was nurses who guided us through those terrible final months with compassion and dignity. After she died, those childhood conversations became sacred memories, and nursing became more than a career choice. It was my connection to her, a promise I had made at her bedside. I'll do it, Mom, I'd whispered as she slept, exhausted from treatments. I'll become a nurse, the kind that makes you proud. My father retreated into grief after her death, becoming a shell of the man he once was. When Carol entered our lives 2 years later, I was desperate for some semblance of normalcy, for someone to fill the gaping hole Mom had left. But Carol made it clear early on that her priorities were her biological son Luke and herself. I became an afterthought, someone to nod at during dinner, but not worth investing in. At home, the confrontation. My blood boiled as Carol stood there, utterly unapologetic about stealing my future. Before I could respond, my father walked into the kitchen, coffee in hand. What's all this yelling about? He asked, his eyes darting nervously between us. Even after 7 years of marriage to Carol, he still walked on eggshells around conflict, preferring peace at any price, even if that price was paid with my happiness. Ask Carol, I snapped. She spent my college savings on Luke's wedding. My name is Emma Williams, and I'm 19 years old. For as long as I can remember, my stepmother Carol has been the dominant force in our house. My dad, once a confident man with opinions of his own according to old family photos, now deferred to her on everything from dinner choices to financial decisions. I don't understand, my dad said, scratching his head as Carol breezed past him, clearly done with the conversation. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know until now, I said, my voice trembling. She said she'd invest the money for me, but she spent it all on Luke's wedding. He frowned, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He hated confrontation, a trait that had only gotten worse since Mom died. Carol knew it and exploited it regularly. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding, he said weakly. Let me talk to her. A misunderstanding? My voice rose in disbelief. Dad, she admitted it. She doesn't even think she did anything wrong. My father had no answer. He muttered something about needing to get to work and disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Later that night, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom, a rare occurrence since my father usually capitulated immediately to keep the peace. We could help her, my father said, his voice uncharacteristically firm. We have savings. Those savings are for our retirement, Carol replied coolly. Besides, she's young. She can take out student loans like everyone else. Why should we sacrifice our future for hers? Our future, not my future. The division couldn't have been clearer. In my room, decision that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my anger crystallized into resolve. The glow-in-the-dark stars my mom had put up when I was 8 still dotted my ceiling, faded now, but still visible in the darkness. Mom would never have let this happen. She would have fought. I wasn't going to let Carol get away with this. That money was mine, and if my father wouldn't fight for me, I'd fight for myself. I thought about how Carol had come into our lives when I was 12, all designer clothes and perfect makeup, presenting herself as the solution to our broken little family. At first, I was grateful for how she organized our chaotic household, implemented systems where there had been only grief-stricken disorder. But I soon realized the systems were designed to benefit her and Luke, not me. Luke was 3 years older than me and had always treated our house like a hotel, somewhere to sleep and get free meals while contributing nothing. His father had been some wealthy businessman who moved overseas and remarried, sending occasional checks but showing little interest in his son. Perhaps that's why Carol was so determined to give Luke everything, to compensate for his father's emotional abandonment. But her compensation came at my expense. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend Lily. Need to talk. Breakfast tomorrow? Then I started searching online for information about legal rights, financial fraud, and family law. By morning, I had a plan. At the lawyer's office, the next morning, after meeting Lily and telling her everything, I called a local lawyer whose name I found on a flyer at the library. Mr. Peterson turned out to be a patient man in his late 40s with kind eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated. I need to know if there's anything I can do, I told him, explaining the situation. It's my savings. I worked for it. Can I get it back? Possibly, he said, his voice calm and professional. If you can prove the money was yours and that she used it without your consent, you have a case. But it won't be easy. Are you prepared to go to court? I hesitated, thinking about what this would mean for my already strained family dynamics. Taking my stepmother to court felt drastic. But what choice did I have? Carol wasn't going to admit she was wrong, and my father clearly wasn't going to intervene. My mother died when I was 10. I found myself saying, unsure why I was sharing this with a stranger. Before she got sick, we used to talk about me becoming a nurse. That money was for nursing school. Mr. Peterson nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes we have to fight for the things that matter, even when it's difficult. Yes, I said finally, straightening my shoulders. I'm prepared. Family friction. When I told my father about the lawsuit, he was horrified. Emma, do you really want to do this? He asked, pacing the living room. It's just going to cause more tension in the family. I stared at my father, really seeing him for perhaps the first time. The slumped shoulders, the permanent furrow between his brows, the way his eyes constantly darted to the door as if checking for Carol's arrival. When had he become so diminished? So afraid? I remembered a different father, the one who had taught me to ride a bike, who had held me through the night when Mom first got sick, who had been our family's strength. That man had gradually disappeared after Carol entered our lives, replaced by this anxious shadow always seeking approval. She already caused tension. I shot back. Dad, she stole from me. This isn't about family. It's about what's right. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought he might side with me. But then Carol walked in, her face a mask of irritation. So, what's the plan, Emma? She sneered. You're going to drag your family through the mud over a few thousand? Real mature. It's not just a few thousand, I said, my voice shaking but steady. It's my future, and I won't let you take that from me. Her lips curled into a smirk. Do what you have to do, sweetheart. You won't win. There was such certainty in her voice, such dismissal. I realized she had never seen me as a threat, never considered me worthy of respect. I was just an inconvenient appendage to her new life with my father. That was the moment I knew there was no turning back. Carol thought she could intimidate me into backing down, but she underestimated just how much my mother's daughter I truly was. The legal battle. With Mr. Peterson's help, I filed the lawsuit and started gathering evidence. Bank statements, pay stubs, anything that proved the money was mine. It wasn't just about the $8,000 anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about refusing to let someone else dictate my worth. Carol had stolen more than my savings. She'd stolen my trust, and I was determined to get it back. The weeks leading up to the trial were tense. My father avoided me, retreating to his workshop whenever I was home. Carol, on the other hand, went out of her way to antagonize me, leaving passive-aggressive notes on the fridge like, maybe save up again. Third time's the charm. Despite the tension at home, I found solace in my friends. You're doing the right thing, Lily assured me during one of our late-night coffee runs. She had no right to take your money. But what if I lose? I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me. You won't lose, Lily said firmly. You've worked too hard for this. And even if it doesn't go your way, you're standing up for yourself. That's what matters. As the court date approached, Mr. Peterson uncovered something unexpected in the financial records he subpoenaed. There are inconsistencies in Carol's spending, he explained during our final meeting. Large withdrawals from joint accounts with your father, luxury purchases he knew nothing about. This changes things. It's not just about your savings anymore. It could expose a pattern of financial mismanagement. The revelation left me reeling. I'd always known Carol was self-serving, but this was another level entirely. I debated whether to include this evidence. It would strengthen my case, but it would devastate my father. I don't know if I can do this to him, I confessed to Lily the night before the hearing. She squeezed my hand gently. Emma, he deserves to know the truth. He's been living in her shadow for too long. Courtroom truth. The morning of the trial arrived with a sense of finality. Carol sat across the courtroom, looking calm and polished, her perfectly styled hair and expensive jewelry making her seem untouchable. My father sat beside her, his expression a mixture of confusion and unease. He didn't even look at me. As the evidence unfolded, my bank statements, the note I'd written to Carol about investing my money, and finally the records showing her pattern of financial misdeeds, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. A hush fell over the room when Mr. Peterson presented the financial record showing Carol's years of siphoning money from my father's accounts for personal luxuries. I glanced at my father as this evidence was presented. His face paled, and he leaned back in his chair, eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time since I'd known her, Carol looked genuinely rattled, her usual superiority crumbling under the weight of exposed truths. When it was my turn to speak, I addressed the judge directly, thinking of my mother with every word. That money was my future, I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. I trusted Carol to help me grow it, but instead, she took it for herself. This isn't just about the $8,000. It's about the principle. I deserve justice, and I deserve to be heard. The judge's verdict came like the breaking of a fever, a release of tension that had been building for months. In light of the evidence, I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Williams. Mrs. Williams is ordered to repay the $8,000 in full with interest within 60 days. Furthermore, I recommend a review of the defendant's financial dealings to ensure no further improprieties have occurred. Carol's face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. My father's head dropped into his hands, and I felt, for the first time in years, like I could breathe freely. After the verdict, as we left the courtroom, Carol shot me a venomous glare. You'll regret this, Emma, she hissed. But I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I felt stronger than her. No, Carol, I said, meeting her gaze directly. You'll regret underestimating me. My father caught up with me in the hallway, his face lined with exhaustion and regret. Emma, he began, his voice faltering. I didn't know. I had no idea she was. You didn't want to know, I interrupted, my tone sharp but not unkind. You looked the other way because it was easier than confronting her. But this is what happens when you ignore the truth. He nodded slowly, shoulders slumping in defeat. You're right. I failed you, and I'm sorry. It wasn't the heartfelt reunion I dreamed of, but it was a start. For the first time, I saw my father not as the passive figure who had let me down, but as a man grappling with the consequences of his choices. It didn't excuse what had happened, but it gave me a sense of closure I hadn't expected. That night, I found him in the living room, staring at a photograph I hadn't seen in years, my mother, him, and me at the beach, all smiling, before cancer took her from us. You remind me of her, he said quietly. She would never have let someone walk all over her either. He looked up at me, eyes glistening. I think I forgot how to stand up for anything after she died. It was easier to just go along, until I was going along with things I knew were wrong. I sat beside him, feeling something like forgiveness begin to take root. It's not too late to remember, Dad. New beginnings. Carol moved out a week later, leaving a curt note. I'll let you know where to send the rest of my things. Luke, predictably, stayed silent. I never heard an apology from either of them, but I realized I didn't need it. I'd fought my battle and won. The $8,000 was officially mine again. It wasn't just money. It was proof that I had taken control of my future. I threw myself into planning for college, researching nursing programs, and figuring out how to stretch every dollar. My father offered to help. I can't make up for what happened, he said one evening as I worked through applications, but I want to support you however I can. I hesitated, unsure if I could trust his offer after everything. But then I saw the sincerity in his eyes. He was trying, and that mattered. Thank you, Dad, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. A few months later, I stood outside my dorm building, staring up at the red brick walls that would house my next chapter. It felt surreal to finally be here after everything I'd been through. My dad had insisted on helping me move in, hovering by the door as I unpacked. Are you sure you don't need anything else? He asked for the fifth time. I smiled, recognizing the question for what it was. Not just about dorm supplies, but about our relationship. I'm good, Dad. Thanks for everything. He hesitated, then nodded. I'm proud of you, Emma. You've worked so hard for this. Hearing those words made my throat tighten. They didn't erase the past, but they showed me he was trying, and that meant something. As I settled into my new life, I thought about what this journey had taught me. I'd always been the quiet one who avoided conflict, but standing up to Carol had shown me I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. I wasn't just a waitress or a forgotten stepdaughter. I was someone who could fight for her future. One weekend, Lily came to visit, and we sat on a campus bench, drinking overpriced coffee. You're killing it, Emma, she said, bumping my shoulder. After everything that happened, you're thriving. Her words stayed with me. For so long, I'd been defined by how others saw me, Carol's dismissiveness, my father's inaction, Luke's indifference. But now, for the first time, I wasn't living in their shadow. I was walking my own path, one that would lead to fulfilling the promise I'd made to my mother years ago. As I walked back to my dorm that evening, I glanced up at the sky, imagining my mom looking down on me. I'm doing it, Mom, I whispered. I'm becoming a nurse, the kind that makes you proud. This wasn't just the resolution of a chapter. It was the beginning of something new. My life was mine, and I was finally ready to live it.